Hey everybody, welcome to Voices of Recovery. Today I'd like to talk about what is Voices of Recovery, and I'm your host, Gregory Greer. What is Voices of Recovery? First, I want to thank all the subscribers, those that have viewed these previous podcasts and the guests that I've had on. There have been some amazingly meaningful experiences. But what is Voices of Recovery? One, the podcast, and more so, what about the services that I provide? So the podcast is to try to unify the professional recovery community and the population that we serve. Earlier, I had Dr. Thomas Estes, I had Deputy Amanda Lyon, Sean Bryan from Palmetto Addiction Recovery Center. I've had a wealth of souls on here that have been able to share their journey of how they've gotten to where they are, what their experiences have been. And so I'd like to share today about what is Voices of Recovery and the services that I provide, individual, family, and group psychotherapy, and incorporating spirituality. So I am a licensed addictions counselor. So yes, I'm going to address addictions. I'm going to address substance use disorders. And I want to be able to incorporate the spiritual component that's talked about in, let's say, 12-step programs. Now, I also do work with SMART and harm reduction. But when it comes to the solution of seeking change, there has to be a spiritual awareness, an awakening that occurs. And so the recent endeavors that I've had, you guys have heard me talk about soul drama, and you've heard me talk about activation breathwork. Recently, I also began my studies towards a PhD in quantum metaphysics. And what in the world is that? People have asked me. First, let me say that I am not the official representative for quantum metaphysics. I am merely a student. And when I finally do complete a PhD, I will still be a student. And so quickly, let me share two things. Identifying the conflicts that people come to me with, and then what are the solutions? Well, people come to me, one, with the substance use disorders that they have. But the problem with addiction is just the surface level. That's just the symptom. The issues underneath are going to be the attachments and the emotional problems that contribute to our poor coping skills. So I look at codependency. You guys have heard me talk about soul drama. That is a group psychotherapy approach by Connie Miller. Now, it was birthed out of what's called psychodrama. Soul drama is a journey of our soul and how the ego blocks us from the sunlight of the spirit. And that's our conscious contact with our innermost spiritual self and ultimately God. And so Carl Jung, who talks about bringing the unconscious to the conscious, is just like the 12-step recovery program. In step 11, we talk about having a conscious contact with God as we understood him. Carl Jung talked about the conscious and bringing the unconscious to the conscious, and what is our awareness. So when I work with individual or group psychotherapy, and even in family, what are the attachments that we have? Our family roles that we experience. Basically, it's our love addiction, if that's such a term. I'll use attachments, and that's a Buddhist approach. And so it's how I sought approval from my same-sex parent, usually the same-sex parent, and that turns into my love language. And so individual, family, and in group psychotherapy, we explore where we identified our attachment and how that relationship pattern has played out through all the relationships in our lives and in our romantic relationships, our coworkers, and friends. So identifying that pattern, and an example I always throw out to make it an extreme case. So if I am an adult child of an alcoholic and I grew up trying to take care of my parent, the indirect message is, if I take care of you, then you will love me. And what happens is I become a caretaker and a rescuer. And so I'm going to take care of everybody else except me because I didn't learn how to take care of me. Or if I was under a very strict home life where there was rigid rules and children are to be seen, not heard, then it's like my voice doesn't matter. And so if my voice doesn't matter, then I might be invisible. And so therefore, I might not be able to know how to communicate effectively my emotions. And it depends on the house system. And so therefore, how do I seek approval? Well, be careful not to say anything. I'll be afraid of conflict. And so then I have a fear of intimacy. So we address these issues in our attachments on how I connect with others. More importantly, though, just like 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous or any other 12-step program, I'm trying to look at me and how I understand myself. So then I incorporate the spiritual component. So when I talk about seeking a PhD in quantum metaphysics, I am studying with the University of Metaphysics, in which now I am an ordained minister with the International Ministry of Metaphysics. It is about being a student of meditation first and being able to go within oneself. So I have brought up some scripture, and I'm not a huge Bible thumper, if that's a term that's used often. I do know from Luke 17:21, Christ was speaking to his disciples, "Behold, the kingdom of God is within." So when we do meditation, I'm seeking to go within myself, to reflect within myself, to understand, identify, process who I am by the experiences that I have had throughout my life, more specifically my childhood, because that's where the magic started, or the conflicts developed. And the more I understand myself, like Jung and shadow work, I'm going to be able to work with my inner self, my inner child, and work with those conflicts and be able to learn how to hold myself. Now, Carl Jung talked about archetypes. So going back to the metaphysical component, it is about self-reflection. So let me give you my definition, my working definition as it evolves to quantum metaphysics. Quantum stands for smallest measurement. And then metaphysics, take the word meta, is a self-reflection. And then physics, self-reflection of physics. The founder of quantum physics, Max Planck, and we'll even use Albert Einstein. These individuals developed mathematical formulas that they too were amazingly philosophical in an incredible spiritual way. If you listen or read some of their spiritual thoughts, it's pretty in depth. In fact, I was shared, and it was given by a third party, that when Albert Einstein was sharing his theory of relativity, he was asked to, dumb it down for the layman. And he said, well, theory of relativity is about relativity, to objects, and we cannot, object can't change another object. So if we use it in a form with individuals, it was said that if you want to influence an object, or a person wants to influence a person, that a person needs to work on changing themselves. So the change that I do for myself would influence thus somebody else, which is interesting because that's what Gandhi said. Gandhi said, be the change that you want to see. So quantum metaphysics, the smallest measurement and self-reflection of the physical self, of what I understand of myself. Quantum, as the smallest measurement of, and I'll use Bruce Lipton as an example in his studies, the biology belief. We in our bodies are all made up of cells and atoms, etc., but each and every minute part of ourselves is composed of us, meaning it all works together as one. I talked about the unconscious. Our bodies naturally are in tune with keeping our bodies in motion. So it's one. So the smallest molecule, the smallest atom of ourselves is still in touch with the brain. So I'll say quantum metaphysics. Each of us individually is part of a whole. So we're each connected to each other and thus the one, God, and the universe. Now some look at God, some call God the universe, Gaia, the divine, and however you want to look at the God of your understanding as we look in recovery, that's where I'm interjecting the spiritual component. So when I work with clients, individual, family, and with group psychotherapy, and I'll say that to Soul Drama, we are exploring how we connect together and identify the attachments that were developed in our family of origin, in our childhood, with seeking approval from mom or dad. And that love language carried forward throughout the rest of our life, some of it healthy and some of it unhealthy. And we're here to address the unhealthy so that we can go within and heal that part of ourselves that have been traumatized. That's the work that I do. So I am a metaphysical practitioner, and I do incorporate that individually. So when I do consent forms, there's a licensed addictions counselor that works at substance use disorders, and then a metaphysical practitioner. And so both consent forms will be worked together as far as how we're going forward to identify the conflicts that I have within. And so like with shadow work of Carl Jung, we're going to learn to be able to hold our inner child. And by the more I'm able to love myself, the more I'm able to love others outside of me. Because with the kind of work we do metaphysically, how I love somebody often is how I love myself. So I'll say that again. My codependence, if I'm seeking to make you happy, I'm not really loving myself. It may sound contradictory, but I'm actually trying to please you so that I can feel okay. But I'm not taking care of me. And so we're learning how to take care of myself so then I can effectively take care of you. Because if I'm really trying to people please you, I'm not really taking care of you. I'm seeking something from you. I'm seeking love from you. Then it becomes transactional. See, if I take care of you whole enough, then you'll really take care of me back. Maybe. That's where the codependence comes into play, because the person that's the rescue or the caretaker doesn't get that in return often. And so we're here to learn balance. So that's the work we do with Voices of Recovery, because the tagline is Voices of Recovery, find your voice. Many of us lost our voice in our childhood seeking approval from our parents. And that's my hope, is to help you find your voice, your internal self, your authentic self, so that you can be in more connection with the rest. And I say that in a healthy way. So I do that one with Soul Drama. So let me introduce Soul Drama quickly, because that is a 3-day weekend workshop that I take people through what's called the 7 doors, which actually correlates with the 12 steps. And it has light messengers. The founder, Connie Miller, took it to Bali, Indonesia. And while in Bali, we work with Muslims, Hindu, Christians, and they're working on what I call the traumas in our family of origin that affect blocking, in essence, the sunlight of the spirit. And in these groups, there's no anger, there's no right or wrong, better than or less, or comparison. Each person is actually identifying and relating to the traumas that each and everybody has all experienced in their childhood. And they're seeing how that blocks their own connection with their soul, and thus the God of their understanding. So it's amazing to work with what? Christians, Hindu, and Muslims, and there's no war. There's no breakout. It's actually what? It becomes a love fest. And it's amazing. So I always encourage everybody to learn how to connect with Soul Drama as we walk through the 7 doors of Soul Drama and identify the soul's journey. And what blocks the soul journey? Our ego. And our ego is everything that we think that we know. And that all developed before the age of 8. Now, there's different psychology out there to say when our personality was actually formed. Some say 2, some say 4, some say by the age of 8, we are concretely identified. And it becomes in our subconscious everything that we do. So again, we're trying to bring the subconscious to the conscious and then have a personality change, because I have to change everything in my personality if I want to stop the patterns that are no longer serving me. And Soul Drama helps us identify the patterns that are blocking my soul's journey, and ultimately, too, what is my higher purpose? Because some of us are like, what am I even here for? Come to Soul Drama. Let's explore where our passion is. And when we connect with our passion, you may find your higher purpose. And interestingly enough, that purpose may change. I say evolve as we go through. And next, I talk about activation breath work. I learned about it 2 years ago in Sedona, Arizona, and I learned the method that I facilitate, activation breath work with Ocean Eagle, and I'm studying some others, quantum breath work, and a few others, the HOMA, and that'll be eclectic, but right now, activation breath work is the format that I follow. And that is to allow ourselves to have a non-pharmaceutical psychedelic experience to go within oneself. There's group psychotherapy, and then activation breath work is a practice where an individual gets to go within themselves to really explore internally. Again, I speak to Luke 17:21, behold, the kingdom of God is within. So individually, we go within oneself to identify, because God speaks to us within this self. And when I connect to that space, there's a lot of experiences that people have. And in order to have these experiences, the breath has to be consistent, that's being taught, along with motion that the body moves with. And then there's going to be loud noises from the exhales, because that activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which creates creativity and emotional. Not the upper part of the respiratory system, that's activating the fight or flight. But through this breathwork process, it activates our own DMT, dimethyltryptamine, because we have it. Ayahuasca is not necessary. Ketamine is not necessary. I'm not opposed to these. People with substance use disorders have a tendency to go to these and escape rather than to allow the process to do what is, I guess, part of exploratory. Once we're able to connect within, it helps us increase our ability to meditate and go within and connect with our higher self. And we do this every day. We do it in the morning as far as meditation, and in the evening. And you do this twice a day, we're able to find groundedness and we're able to find balance. And this allows us to work with our coping skills as we go through. These are the services that I offer at Voices of Recovery: individual, family, group psychotherapy, that's soul drama, and then we do the activation breath work. I'm also certified with the lower level 1 of neuro-linguistic programming, and that helps us reprocess how I use my vocabulary and the belief systems. This, once again, works with what I understand consciously, but then what comes up subconsciously. And that's a mild form of hypnotherapy. So I offer these modalities in each level of care, one under the license of addiction and the other as a metaphysical practitioner. That's what Voices of Recovery is all about. It's about bringing us together to connect, because we are one with God. Voices of Recovery, the podcast, is about bringing the professional recovery community together and the population that we serve. And my hope is that this continues to grow so that we can help each other, because our community is what allows us. If you follow step 1 of the 12 traditions, our common welfare should come first. Individual recovery depends on AA unity. So as a community, we are one. We are one, and the one individual that needs help is contingent upon us. And so we are the parents in some way, and people emulate. Again, be the change that you want to see. If I'm working on myself, those people that seek help will see what I'm doing. Don't tell me, show me. And when they see what I'm doing, they're going to say, I want some of that. Because each and every one of us struggles at some time in our life, and that's about what I call the crisis necessary for change. And I'm quoting Dr. Tommy Estes, the crisis necessary for change to be able to seek that and break the illusion or denial, the illusion of what I thought my reality was. And that's from the subconscious that was developed in our childhood from the traumas in seeking love from the same-sex parent. Not always the same-sex parent, but most of the time. So I want to thank you for paying attention to Voices of Recovery, the guests that I've had on so far, and the guests that are going to continue. If you have any comments, thoughts, feelings, feedback, anything that you would like to hear, please message me. Let's connect and let's work together, because we are one. For Voices of Recovery, I'm Gregory Greer. Thank you and namaste.